Happy New Year and welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we dive into the policies shaping the work of Florida's school leaders. I'm Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz, lobbyist for FAFSA and several school districts across the state of Florida.
Well, welcome back, and we hope that all of our listeners had a relaxing holiday break and are now ready to tackle the second half of the school year.
Yes, and we hope that the rest of the school year is successful and will go by quickly.
It'll be May before we know it for sure. But of course, before we can even think about the end of the school year, there's still a lot of work to be done, especially since the Florida legislative session starts tomorrow. And we hope that you have made plans to come to Tallahassee in a couple of weeks to join us for the Advocate 26 conference and be part of the process.
Advocate will be a great event, as it always is. We have some amazing speakers for the legislative briefing and a lot of appointments set to meet one-on-one with legislators.
That's right. But before we get going on session and Advocate, we've got one fun fact to share about the Florida legislative session. So if you watch the House and Senate chamber sessions tomorrow on the Florida channel, you will see all of the desks covered in flower arrangements. Jessica, do you know why there are all of the flowers on the desks?
I do. It is the tradition with the flowers on the desk did not start as a welcome gift like a lot of people would assume, which of course would make some sense. But it actually happened decades ago in the old Capitol. So if you visited Tallahassee, that's the building in front of our current Capitol building. Right before session, the floors were repainted, and the smell of the chemicals from the paint was so awful and it wouldn't go away. Before they started session, they decided to try to fix that. And the First Lady of Florida at that time made the decision to bring large bouquets of flowers in and put them on all of the legislators' desks to try to mask that terrible smell from the paint. So with that, a tradition was born. And today we see flowers on their desks, and it's sent as a good luck token for a successful session.
That is really a cool tradition. And it is only the second busiest day of the year for florists in Tallahassee. And of course, Valentine's Day remains the first, the most busy, but still a really cool way to get things started. And the current Capitol, it was built and completed in 1977. So this would have been
pre-70s. So look for those flowers tomorrow on their desk. They are actually quite beautiful. And we know this week is going to be a very busy one with the first day of session. We will also have on that day the governor's State of the State address. And there actually are even going to be a number of committee meetings following all of that pomp and circumstance in the morning.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll hear from both the speaker and the president during those welcome speeches. And these are a great way to listen in and kind of hear what they're prioritizing. Not that any of our elected leaders have been short with words over the last few months and telling us what their priorities might be. But there's also no shortage of education bills that will be discussed in committees and on the floor. So the members came back from break and started filing many new bills, with the filing deadline being last Friday, January 9th.
That's right. So that means for the most part, we know what the bills are that we're going to be dealing with for this session. There are a couple notable exceptions, and the first are committee bills. These are bills that are the product of a legislative committee rather than an individual legislator. So the filing deadline is for member bills. Committee bills can continue to be created. We see these most often coming out of the House, but they could come from either chamber, but generally it's the House that has committee bills. And I would expect a number of bills like this to appear. Of course, also bills can be amended, and those amendments can introduce different policy components. So there's still a lot to be determined, even though all the member bills have been filed at this time.
That's right. So there were some bills that were filed recently that, of course, are going to have some interest for our members. Filed late last week was House Bill 1253, Athletics in Public K-12 Schools, which requires the Florida High School Athletic Association to adopt bylaws allowing coaches businesses to provide food, transportation, and recovery services using personal funds in good faith. It also states that the use of personal funds does not constitute an impermissible benefit when properly reported and not used for recruiting purposes. And it limits the use of personal funds to $15,000 per athletic team per year.
And this is in response to some activity that we saw occur actually in 2025, and the High School Athletic Association got involved. It was in the news a good bit. And so this is in response to that. We'll see what happens with that. Additionally, this past week, Senate Bill 430 and its companion were also filed. These bills would require instructional, administrative, and pre-K personnel to subscribe to a new oath affirming their support for federal and state constitutions and a commitment to personal and professional ethics. It would also require administrative and instructional employees of the Florida college system and state universities to take a similar oath.
Interesting. So Senate Bill 1170 that was filed would add a requirement for the Office of Reimagining Education and Career Health to provide 8-year net earnings data comparing a high school graduate with industry certification and a comparable associate degree after deducting attendance costs and financial aid. It would also require each district school board to vote on a policy providing video cameras in self-contained special education classrooms at the request of a parent, and would prohibit schools or districts from concealing the identity of an employee in any video footage and ensure that audio is included alongside the recording. Video cameras in self-contained classrooms has been an issue that's been going on and talked about for many years, which is something we see a lot in Tallahassee. Just because a bill does not pass one year does not mean that it won't reappear in the future.
That is very true. We often see issues come back again and again. So it's not just, oh, it didn't pass this year and we'll never hear from it again. In fact, that's usually not the way it works. Sometimes it takes a few sessions for things to pass, and other times issues eventually kind of lose steam, if they've been heard a couple of years and there hasn't been any traction, and then eventually they don't return. Another interesting thing to watch during the first week of session is what, if any, bills will be heard on the floor this week. By hearing them in the first week, it signals to everyone that they are a priority for that particular chamber. So if we see a bill in the House next week that's going to be heard, we know that more than likely that is showing us that it's a speaker priority. Same thing for the Senate. It would be a priority for the Senate president.
Yeah, and we saw that, of course, a couple years ago, most notably House Bill 1, right, named House Bill 1 with intention. It was passed on the first day.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We definitely have talked in the past about some priorities on the Senate side in particular that we may see ready to go for that first day of session. We will definitely keep an eye on what the House and the Senate do this week on the floor, as well as any of these bills or others that pop up in the next 60 days. The clock is started.
The clock is starting. The governor also announced this week that there will be a special session. So we know not only are we going to have this 60-day legislative session, but we already know in advance that there will be a special session regarding congressional redistricting. This special session will be held in April, is what he indicated, after the regular 2026 session. The governor stated the reason for this timing is that they are awaiting a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. So the High Court is expected to rule later this year in a voting rights case, which may bar states from considering the racial makeup of voting populations when they draw new districts. This could impact the drawing of the maps. So that is why the governor says we're going to wait. He's going to wait and call it in April. In the past, House Speaker Perez has stated that he wanted to work on redistricting now during the regular session, but we shall see how this all pans out.
For sure. We'll see if who's going to win that little debate.
Yes.
But also, if the past is any indication, it probably will be the only special session this year. The governor also indicated that there may be a call for a second special session on property taxes. though that could be tackled during the regular session if the legislature chooses to do so. So we know that the House has got some bills already filed, hoping to tackle that. The governor has continued to talk about doing a special session. If it goes to special session, of course, we can't really build a budget in 60 days. Either way, it means session's going to keep going until we get through that property tax piece. So stay tuned for sure. Another topic of note for this week is that last week, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to pass the bipartisan Anchor for Military Families Act. This act will help ease many of the burdens that come with the frequent relocation of military families, and it will ensure that these families have access to key information regarding relocation resources, educational rights, school enrollment support, housing assistance, and more.
Wow, that's a great bill, and it will be very impactful, I'm sure, here in Florida, as we obviously have a large population of military families. The Anchor for Military Families Act has gotten a great deal of support. It was endorsed by Blue Star Families, Partners in Promise, and NASSP. We'll keep you updated on how this moves along at the national level.
So we have updated you for this week. It's going to be a busy week moving forward. Make sure you're watching all of our newsletters and certainly social media, but stay tuned for the 2026 FAFSA Leadership Lounge, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. Podcast was produced by Jeff Willoughby. Original musical recordings by David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topics, suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.